As our bodies are armored with ceramite, so are our minds protected by our loyalty. As our bolters are charged with death for the Emperor's enemies, so are our thoughts charged with his wisdom. From the Lexicon Mortalis, Legiones Astartes, Etiquette of Chaplaincy, Primary Iteration. The Chaplain Order, established towards the end of the Great Crusade, was intended to create a cadre of fearsome veteran warriors who would enforce a cohesion of doctrine and belief in the scattered and increasingly idiosyncratic legions far from Terra.
Hi, I'm Nick, and welcome to the Painter's Mess. So in today's video, I am going to Kitbash High Marshal Helbrecht into a Legiones Astartes Blood Angel Chaplain. Let's go make a mess. So I want to start this video off with a story that is basically what's going on at my local store. So we currently have about 7 or 8 of us that play Horus Hersey on a regular basis. And we have a lot of the legions covered, but we don't have all of them covered. And for me, being a Death Guard player, a lot of my legion abilities and stuff like that is shooting based. And I wanted something that could get up in close combat relatively quickly and do the combat stuff. And that's kind of what I enjoy a lot of in Horus Heresy. So we already have a World Eaters player and we already have a Space Wolves player. And I had to pick a Loyalist Legion because I already have a Traitor Legion. So I might as well pick something that I can get up close with, which is either Blood Angels or Raven Guard. And I chose to go with Blood Angels just after watching a few battle reports and seeing how gorgeous the red and gold painting is. So this is what I decided to do with that. Now I did buy this Helbrecht model a long time ago, and I wanted it because of the aesthetic that it offered, and it looked very close to older Legion armor with the large armor panels on the shins, and that is basically one of the reasons why I chose to go with this model. And I thought it would have been a great Kitbash, which is why I decided to make it a Chaplain, because it also has the cloth on it as well. So for the most part, I basically just built it normally, and then I started taking off the Black Templar iconography. So the first one being the one on the chest. And all I did was snip off as much as I could with my blade, not snip, cut off most of what I could with my blade, and then just scratch it and sand it away with those small sanding sticks as smooth as I could get it. Now next, there were some little armor iconography pieces that were basically like little dangly bits on the chain on the chest of the model, and all I did was clip those off because I have replacements. And the bits that you're going to see me use are actually from the Grey Tide Studio, which is a company that makes STL files, and they just ended a campaign with Blood Angels in mind because the 40K release of the new Blood Angels. And they come with a bunch of different armor panels, heads, shoulder pads, all this stuff. They come with a whole bunch of stuff, and I think for the Elite set it's like $40, and I definitely decided to buy it just so I could put some of those bits on this model and the rest of my army as well, to replace the swords and the axes and the maces of Perditions. So I wanted to have all of those bits available to 3D print and throw on these models and the rest of my army. So right now I currently have the video slowed down so you can pause and see what I did, which is basically just scrape off the front panel of the chest and then remove those little pieces. Everything else is pretty much built normally. So next is to remove the cross on the shoulder pad, and again just taking my knife, which is a new blade so it's relatively sharp, and just kind of scraping it off and trying to smooth it out as much as I can. Now I'm scraping down into the cloth, which kind of leaves a little bit of an overhang later on, or at least like I noticed it. You guys probably might not, but for what it's worth, I should have taken the blade and gone back the other way and kind of gotten rid of all of that. But I smoothed it out as best I could. It's not perfect, but it definitely works enough. It definitely works well enough to paint, and it's smooth enough. And I just glue it on, and like I said, most of this model is pretty much the base model. What I did notice is that little piece, I didn't realize that was part of the cape, and you had to glue that part in, and it was already bent. So I had to fix that and glue it in. But like I said, yeah, the rest of the model is pretty much the same. I do put the thing that is the lantern that he's holding on the arm. I thought about replacing it with something else, but I thought it looked cool, and with the chaplain being usually black, or at least I've seen most of them black, and they always have like some kind of cloth. I thought the cape and the tabard that's on his front would be really aesthetically pleasing when it comes to like being a character model in this army. Now, another thing that I decided to do was, or that I had to do was, there was a large cross that sat on the left-hand chest of the model, and it was attached to a piece of like parchment that wrapped underneath his arm. And I cut that cross off just with my snips, and I printed off one of these little icons, and it's a little metallic disc, basically chest candy, for the same kind of aesthetic. And I drilled a little bit into the back of it just to give it that divot where there is one for the model, so it would sit in the same position as best as I could, or as best as it would look. If I didn't have that, I probably would have snipped that little protrusion off and then just glued it on from there. And then I attached the parchment underneath to give it the same aesthetic as the original model. Now, the next bit is the little tiny pieces that I was able to 3D print from the Grey Tide Studio Crimson Blood, Crimson something campaign. And they're little belt, I think they're labeled as like belt decorations, but because he had that chain on his neck, and I snipped those other decorations from the exact same spot, all I had to do was hang them onto the chain as if they were part of it. And with a little dot of glue, like, they will look perfect. So the next is trying to figure out what weapon I wanted to give him and how I wanted to do the arm. Now, the arm is currently holding, or the original model, the arm is holding a sword, and I thought about keeping the sword and just using that, but for me, a chaplain that gives hatred, he deserves an axe. And I didn't want the model to be exactly the same with only the crosses being removed. I wanted more variation, or at least a bigger change of the Kitbash. So I printed off one of the axes from their two-handed axes from the campaign, and you can see that they do have some Blood Angel iconography on them, and they looked really good. So instead of a sword where he's looking out in the distance, he now has an axe that he's kind of pointing forward for the charge. Again, just printed off one of these shoulder pads that were from the campaign, and this one has the Blood Angel symbol with a little bit more detail and like armoring on the shoulder pad than a regular Mark 6 pad would be. And again, this is just from the campaign. They look really cool, and you'll see what it looks like once I get it on there and get it painted. And something that I forgot to record is what I did with the backpack and the head. So the backpack is the Assault, it's the jump pack from the Assault Mark 6 set. I bought an extra box just so I could make extra models with jump packs. So I actually plan on customizing a Sanguinary Guard instead of buying the models and just using the Beaky Boys to make another set of that with the banners and the swords and the maces and stuff like that from the 3D printed campaign. So I just smoothed off the back as much as I could for the backpack and glued it on. And now although a cape and a jetpack don't sound very appealing to me, it sounds like a recipe for a disaster. I think it actually gives it a really cool aesthetic, and it's going to have a jump pack in my army, so why not give it a jump pack now? And something I didn't record here is the head. So I also had 3D printed the head. That one's not from the campaign. It was a different sculpt on Cults 3D, but it's basically the beaky heads from GW. And although I wish I could have gotten some of those instead, they are currently sold out, as well as many of the things for Blood Angels are currently sold out on the website as of this date, which is the 30th of October. So 3D printing is also a fun way to go. So this head in particular has little gold ridges, or ridges that will be painted gold, as well as like a little gem in the head, but I ended up painting that gold as well. So the next part is filling in the wrist. So because of the angle at which the arm rested and the axe sat, I had to do a little green stuff, and all I did was roll up a tiny piece, fill it in with my little sculpting tool, wrapped it around, smoothed it out, and then that is like a triangular flat point tool. So it's relatively flat, but it kind of comes to a point. And all I did was make little divots as if it was the wrist piping in the gap where the green stuff is. And all you got to do is just push down and then do that a couple times, giving it a tiny microscopic gap in between, so that it looks like it's the piping like every other Space Marine has, either under their arm, behind their legs, and in their wrist. And you can see kind of what I did. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for me, and I'm not too picky. So from there, that's pretty much the Kitbash. It's nothing extravagant. It has a little bit of 3D printed iconography, and I think it looks really good. And for that, I hope you enjoy what I did with the paint. So here you go. So I hope you enjoyed that little Kitbash. I do plan on putting out the video of me painting in the next couple days, although I'm still working on my camera angles, so it might not be the best, but I'll try to go add some commentary to it. It'll most likely just be a lot of painting with some music behind it. I'm not quite sure how I want to do Kitbash and painting videos yet, but I'm going to figure that out, and in the interim, I'm just going to put the painting out there and let it fall where it may. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Let me know how I did in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you on what you think would be another good Kitbash, or another addition to this upcoming Blood Angels army. So thank you. I appreciate it. Be kind to each other, and go make a mess.